stuck. You disintegrated Einstein.
Calm down, Marty. I didn't disintegrate anything. The molecular structure of both Einstein and the car are completely intact.
When most people think of Back to the Future, they think of the slick silver DeLorean hitting 88 miles per hour, the burst of fire on the pavement, and a wild-eyed Doc Brown yelling about flux capacitors. It's a film etched deep into pop culture. Memory passed down through generations like a treasured heirloom. But beneath the thrilling visuals and quirky charm lies a behind-the-scenes story. Oh, that's almost as strange and fascinating as time travel itself. What many fans don't realize is that this beloved trilogy, often viewed as a polished, seamless masterpiece, nearly fell apart before it even got started. In fact, if you rewind the timeline, you'll find a different time machine, different lead actor, and a whole lot of internal friction that was never meant to see the light of day. Cast members who now look like a family on screen once shared quiet tensions, hurt feelings, and doubts about each other's talents. It's those small, unseen moments that make the magic of Back to the Future even more miraculous. Because it wasn't just good writing or special effects that made the film iconic. It was the transformation of those tensions into chemistry. Those mistakes into moments, and those creative decisions sometimes made under duress that shaped a cinematic legend. Let's start with something that still stuns fans. When they hear it for the first time, the original time machine was not a car. It wasn't even mobile.
Oh.
In early drafts of the script, the time machine was designed to be a stationary contraption. Something that looked more like a clunky refrigerator than the sleek DeLorean we now revere. Imagine, for a moment, Marty McFly opening the heavy metal door of a fridge, stepping inside like he's about to grab a soda. It's only to be zapped into 1955. That was the early vision. A time chamber that echoed the outdated tropes of 1950s sci-fi films. Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale, the brilliant duo behind the story, were experimenting with a lot of concepts at the time. The refrigerator idea had a kind of eerie mystery to it, but it also posed a serious storytelling problem. How could a giant, immobile appliance fuel the fast-paced, chase-driven adventure they had in mind? The creative team eventually realized that the fridge concept would trap their characters in one location and limit the film's energy. And, as an added concern, they worried that kids might try to crawl into real refrigerators, something that, back then, was a real safety hazard. The shift to a car, especially one as flashy and futuristic as the DeLorean DMC-12, completely changed the film's dynamic. Not only was it mobile and visually striking, but it added personality. The DeLorean became a character in its own right, quirky, unpredictable, and impossible to forget. But the DeLorean was just one piece of the puzzle. Before the time machine could go anywhere, the film itself had to get made, and that was no small feat. When Zemeckis and Gale first pitched Back to the Future, they were met with a sea of rejection. Most studios didn't get it. They couldn't wrap their heads around a movie that blended comedy, science fiction, family drama, and romance all with a slightly absurd plot involving a teenager accidentally making his mom fall in love with him. Hollywood was deep into the era of edgier films, and many executives found the script too wholesome or weirdly sentimental. Some worried it would be too confusing for general audiences. Others just didn't think it was funny enough. The concept felt too risky, too hard to categorize. Zemeckis and Gale were passed over more than 40 times. But what kept the dream alive was the backing of one key player, Steven Spielberg. Spielberg believed in the story from the start. Support helped get Universal Pictures on board, albeit cautiously. Even then, there was no guarantee of success. Universal knew it was a gamble, and for the team, the pressure was enormous. They had to create a film that was both clever and clear, exciting yet heartfelt. And the real test came when it was time to cast the lead character, because, as everyone would soon find out, Back to the Future was only going to work if the audience fell in love with Marty McFly. The role of Marty McFly seemed tailor-made for Michael J. Fox. He had the charm, the comedic timing, and the ability to make an implausible story feel relatable. But there was a major problem. He was already a TV star on Family Ties, one of the most popular shows at the time. The producers of Family Ties were reluctant to let him take on another role, fearing it would interfere with the show's production schedule. So the filmmakers reluctantly moved on and cast Eric Stoltz, a talented and respected dramatic actor known for his emotional depth. For several weeks, Stoltz was Marty. Scenes were shot, the production moved forward, and everyone tried to make it work. But something just felt off. Stoltz took the role seriously, maybe too seriously. His method acting style clashed with the light-hearted tone the film needed. His Marty was somber, a little too intense, and missing the humor that would define the movie. Eventually, Zemeckis made the painful call to fire Stoltz, even though it meant reshooting weeks of footage. When Fox's schedule opened up just slightly, the team leapt at the chance to bring him on again, though it meant filming Family Ties by day and Back to the Future by night. Fox barely slept. He lived on caffeine, rarely had more than a few hours to rest, and spent his days hopping between two demanding sets. Yet, despite the chaos, his performance was exactly what the film needed: energetic, funny, and emotionally grounded. His chemistry with the rest of the cast was immediate and electric. The gamble paid off. The magic was back. That magic, however, didn't come without friction. One of the most talked-about tensions behind the scenes was between Michael J. Fox and Lea Thompson, who played his teenage mother, Lorraine. Their chemistry on screen feels so natural that it's hard to imagine anything less than perfect harmony off-screen. But in the beginning, things were far from smooth. Thompson had grown close to Eric Stoltz during the early days of filming. They had developed a rapport, and Stoltz's serious approach to the character influenced the way she played Lorraine. So when he was suddenly fired, it was jarring. Fox, though a rising star, came from television, a world still seen as lesser by many film actors at the time. Thompson has since admitted she harbored a bit of snobbery and skepticism when Fox joined the project. She wasn't unkind, but there was a wall between them. Add to that the tension of having to reshoot scenes under tight deadlines, and the pressure cooker was ready to blow. But something remarkable happened. As they continued working together, especially in the now iconic scenes where Lorraine awkwardly flirts with her future son, Thompson began to see Fox in a new light. His comedic instincts were razor-sharp. He brought warmth and a sense of play that transformed the tone of the film. Slowly, respect replaced resentment. Thompson later acknowledged her initial bias and praised Fox's professionalism, talent, and humility. What began as quiet tension blossomed into a working relationship that helped define some of the film's most memorable and hilarious moments. Their growing mutual respect is a quiet but essential part of the film's success. While Fox and Thompson were navigating their complicated dynamic, another crucial piece of the puzzle was almost missing altogether: Christopher Lloyd as Doc Brown. Today, Lloyd's portrayal is legendary: the mad scientist with frantic gestures, wild eyes, and boundless energy. But few fans know that he almost turned down the role. When Lloyd first received the script, he was unsure, skimmed it quickly, and felt it was a little too out there, a little too cartoonish. He tossed it aside. It wasn't until a friend urged him to take a second look that he reconsidered. Fortunately, he gave it another read, and something clicked. He saw the potential in Doc Brown, a character who, while eccentric, was also deeply passionate and strangely endearing. Once Lloyd committed, he dove in completely, developed Doc's distinctive speech patterns, exaggerated movements, and offbeat energy. The result was pure magic. His chemistry with Fox became the heartbeat of the film. Their friendship, Pan, unlikely bond between a high schooler and a half-mad inventor, felt genuine and funny and full of heart. But the truth is, it all hung on a thread. If Lloyd had stuck with his first instinct, if Fox had never joined the cast, or if Stoltz had stayed in the role, the movie we know today might never have existed. It's a reminder of just how fragile greatness can be, how often it comes down to a few last-minute decisions. A bit of luck and a whole lot of trust in the people around you. And what's truly remarkable is how each of these behind-the-scenes stories reflects the very theme of Back to the Future itself. The idea that a single decision, small in the moment, can change everything. If Zemeckis and Gale hadn't swapped the refrigerator for the DeLorean, we wouldn't have one of the most iconic cars in film history. If Spielberg hadn't believed in the script, it may have never been made. If Stoltz hadn't been replaced, the tone of the entire trilogy might have shifted into something darker and less endearing. And if actors like Thompson and Lloyd hadn't been open to change, hadn't allowed their initial doubts to evolve into trust, we wouldn't have the film that fans continue to love, study, and share decades later. It's these real-world twists, these quiet battles and bold choices that transformed Back to the Future from a quirky idea into a cultural milestone. So the next time you hear that iconic blast of electricity or see a pair of flaming tire tracks disappear into the night, remember, there's a whole other story behind the story, one filled with risk, resistance, reconciliation, and ultimately, revelation. It turns out that the real time machine wasn't just the DeLorean. It was the collaboration of everyone who believed in this film enough to fight for it. Again and again, across every setback and through every twist in the timeline. It's kind of wild to imagine that for a brief moment, Christopher Lloyd, the man we now so deeply associate with Doc Brown's wide-eyed brilliance and uncontainable energy, was just a breath away from walking away from Back to the Future altogether. He almost didn't even give it a shot. He skimmed the script, didn't feel an immediate connection, and tossed it aside. In another timeline, that might have been the end of it. But something made him pause. Maybe he gave it a second read and saw things he'd missed the first time. Maybe someone close to him said, "Hey, you should look at that again. There's something there." Whatever it was, thank goodness it happened, because that second look changed everything. When Lloyd read it again, he started to see past the surface. The concept was so bizarre: an original time travel in a modified DeLorean, a teenager getting stuck in 1955 and nearly erasing his own existence. It wasn't just your average Hollywood plot. There was depth, there was absurdity, it was humor and heart packed into something that felt both risky and electrifying. But what truly sealed the deal for Lloyd was the chance to work with director Robert Zemeckis. Even though Zemeckis wasn't yet the cinematic giant he'd become, he already had this spark about him, this fearless, inventive way of storytelling. That told Lloyd this wasn't going to be just another quirky comedy. Zemeckis had vision. And it was that passion, that creative energy pulsing through every conversation, every frame, that ultimately drew Lloyd back in. He said yes. And that one decision, one script he could have left unread, became one of the most important of his entire career. Once the cameras started rolling, it was instantly clear that Christopher Lloyd had made the right choice. He didn't just play Doc Brown, he became him. With his electrified hair, manic energy, and unshakable belief in scientific wonder, Lloyd took what could have been a cartoon character and gave him a soul. He built Doc from the inside out, a brilliant, eccentric inventor who was as endearing as he was unpredictable. It wasn't a performance of subtle restraint, but that's exactly what the film needed. He swung big and landed every beat. And when paired with Michael J. Fox, the chemistry was nothing short of electric. The two balanced each other perfectly, Fox with his grounded, wide-eyed disbelief, and Lloyd with his off-the-wall bursts of genius. Their dynamic didn't just make scenes entertaining, it made them unforgettable. Together, they created one of the most iconic friendships in cinema, bridging generations and capturing that impossible too-fake feeling of adventure and trust. Doc Brown wasn't just the inventor of time travel. He was the emotional anchor, the unlikely mentor, the heart that beat beneath the film's wild premise. Lloyd's performance added a richness to Back to the Future that elevated it from clever sci-fi into something deeply human. It's hard, maybe impossible, to imagine anyone else pulling it off. And yet we came this close to living in a version of the world where Lloyd passed it by. That what if is haunting because it reminds us how fragile greatness is, how the things we cherish most can hinge on the smallest choices. Lloyd's decision to give it another shot didn't just change his life, it changed movie history. Because Back to the Future didn't just become a hit, it became a phenomenon, a trilogy, a cartoon, a musical, a legacy. And at the center of it all stands a wide-eyed scientist shouting, "Great Scott," a man who nearly walked away from the very role that would define him for generations. But the changes didn't stop there. If you think Lloyd almost walking away was a surprising twist, get ready for another. Let's talk about Jennifer Parker, Marty McFly's girlfriend. The girl next door who believes in Marty even when he doubts himself. Most fans instantly picture Claudia Wells in the role, but here's something that even longtime fans might not know. She wasn't the original actress cast. That role originally went to Melora Hardin, a rising star who had the perfect blend of charm, presence, and talent. At the time, Hardin was paired opposite Eric Stoltz, who had already begun filming as Marty. They had chemistry. The production seemed on track, and the pieces appeared to be falling into place. But once Stoltz was replaced with Michael J. Fox due to a major shift in tone and vision for the character, everything changed. Fox brought a much lighter, more comedic energy, which immediately transformed the feel of the film. And while Hardin was doing everything right, there was one issue the producers couldn't get past: her height. She stood several inches taller than Fox, and in Hollywood, especially in the 80s, that was seen as a visual imbalance, particularly for a romantic pairing. It wasn't a question of acting ability, chemistry, or dedication. It was simply optics. The producers felt that the difference might look awkward on screen. And as harsh as it sounds, that one physical detail cost Hardin the role. Claudia Wells, who had previously auditioned and matched Fox better in height, was brought in to replace her. And with that, the film locked in the Jennifer that audiences now know and love. Being let go from a major film, especially one you've already started working on, can feel like the end of the world for a young actor. But Melora Hardin didn't let it break her. She picked herself up, kept pushing forward, and carved out an incredible career of her own. In fact, she went on to play one of the most unforgettable TV characters in recent memory, Jan Levinson from The Office. Yes, that Jan, the one who ran Dunder Mifflin with icy precision and had that hilariously dysfunctional romance with Michael Scott. She made viewers cringe, laugh, and sometimes feel oddly emotional, and she delivered every line with the perfect blend of madness and brilliance. She also had a meaningful run on Monk, playing the tragic and mysterious Trudy, whose memory lingered like a ghost over the entire series. Hardin didn't just bounce back, she thrived. In interviews, she's spoken openly and graciously about being let go from Back to the Future. She's admitted it was disappointing, but she's never sounded bitter. In fact, her attitude has always been one of gratitude for the lessons learned, the opportunities that came after, and the strange, winding road of show business. Her story is a reminder that sometimes the role that slips away isn't the end of the story. Sometimes it's just the beginning of something even better. And just when you think Back to the Future's story couldn't get any more emotional, you fast forward, ironically, to the future itself. 2025 marked the 40th anniversary of the original film. Fans got a reunion that felt almost like a dream. At Fan Expo New Orleans, the original cast reunited in what can only be described as a celebration of legacy, love, and time traveling. Magic. Michael J. Fox, Lea Thompson, Christopher Lloyd, Thomas F. Wilson, and even Huey Lewis came together to share memories, laughter, and a few heartfelt tears. It wasn't just another press event, it was a full-circle moment. Fox, now visibly affected by his ongoing battle with Parkinson's, remained sharp, funny, and incredibly moving as he shared stories from the set, recalling sleepless nights, crazy stunts, and the moments that shaped the film Manda's life. Thompson spoke about how surreal it is that a movie they shot 4 decades ago still resonates with new generations. She recalled the challenges, the joys, and how time has given her an even deeper appreciation for the experience. Lloyd, always magnetic, shared how Doc Brown continues to be a part of his identity and how humbled he feels that people still care. Wilson brought humor and energy, joking about how he's still known as Biff everywhere he goes and how he wouldn't have it any other way. And Huey Lewis, the man behind The Power of Love, reflected on how that one song, Tied Forever to Marty McFly, became a symbol of youth, dreams, and cinematic adventure. The event was more than nostalgia, it was proof that some stories don't age, they just keep getting better. That reunion wasn't just about the past, it was a tribute to the future the film helped build. It reminded everyone that Back to the Future is more than a movie, it's a cultural touchstone. It's about hope. It's about choices. It's about the idea that the future is always unwritten, and that we each have the power to shape it, no matter where we come from. Fans at the reunion, from lifelong devotees to young kids seeing the movie for the first time, shared how it changed their lives. It's how it inspired careers, comforted them in tough times, or simply brought their families closer. That kind of impact doesn't fade, it grows. And seeing the cast come together, laugh like old friends, and look back with such affection only added to the film's mythology. It's hard to imagine a better way to honor a movie that's about traveling through time than watching the very people who made it come alive reflect on their journey. Maybe in another 40 years we'll see them again, older, wiser, and still cracking jokes about flux capacitors and 1.21 gigawatts. But one thing's for sure, Back to the Future didn't just stand the test of time, it redefined it. Stories behind the film, the near misses, the casting changes, the friendships born under pressure are just as powerful as the story on screen. So if you figured out a few of these secrets already, hats off to you. But if not, you're not alone. Even the biggest fans are still discovering pieces of this cinematic puzzle. And that's what makes it timeless.